There was quite an interesting interview on IFL TV with Dillian Whyte at the Anthony Joshua versus Kevin Johnson press conference. It's one I'd noted down at the time to talk about briefly, but hadn't got round to for, God, it must have been a week or so now. Now, Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua clearly have a bit of history. Dillian Whyte beat Anthony Joshua in the amateurs. We've seen Anthony Joshua lose his cool a bit when Dillian Whyte's name has been mentioned. I also heard on an interview with James Ali Basir on Bayloric TV's channel that there was some sort of beef between the two at the Klitschko sparring camp. I think they sort of made friends at the end of it, but there was quite a lot of tension between the two guys. Obviously, Anthony Joshua probably not liking the fact that Dillian Whyte is often brought up as the guy who beat him, if that makes sense. Clearly there's a little bit of tension there. And Dillian Whyte is being used by Kevin Johnson as a sort of training partner, perhaps a sparring partner, certainly a training partner. Dillian Whyte, as a result, is showing up to the press conferences, giving interviews on his thoughts, that sort of thing. I've got two sort of suspicions. One, that Eddie Hearn is possibly building towards a British title fight between the two, which would be a good fight. Or secondly, that it's a tactic from Team Johnson to try and get under Anthony Joshua's skin, to try and wind Anthony Joshua up and to try and make him lose his cool. That's kind of by the by, but I would be interested to hear people's thoughts on that. Do you think that potentially the two of them could be set to clash sooner rather than later, perhaps a reversal of the British title? Let's not forget, before Dillian Whyte's ban, he was scheduled to fight for the English title, and by the end of December he'd have had 3 comeback fights, so he could potentially be at a time where he's looking to step up and have a real fight. However, the most interesting thing that Dillian Whyte said was not directly about future fights with Anthony Joshua. It was about something that occurred at the Klitschko sparring camp, when both he and Anthony Joshua sparred Kevin Johnson. Now, I'd advise you to look this up on the IFL TV channel. It's their most recent interview with Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte says that Kevin Johnson is a very, very smart fighter who got the better of not just Anthony Joshua, but also himself, Dillian Whyte, in sparring. I think this is at least remotely conceivable, that in 20-ounce gloves, in head guards, where the threat of Anthony Joshua's supposed power may be considerably less, Kevin Johnson could pose Anthony Joshua some questions. I mean, let's be honest, Anthony Joshua hasn't shared a professional ring with anyone with the defensive capability, technical background and experience at high level as Kevin Johnson. Kevin Johnson, whilst there may be questions about his fitness and desire, there may be questions about his punching output and work rate, the guy is unquestionably very, very talented. His ring positioning, his defence, his jab are all, real assets to Kevin Johnson. And in a one-round sparring contest where you're wearing padded gloves and a head guard, where power and fitness are perhaps less of a factors than they would be in a championship fight, it's not inconceivable that Kevin Johnson could cause quite big problems for young fighters like Dillian Whyte and for young fighters like Anthony Joshua. Of course, there has to be an assessment that Dillian Whyte could potentially be biased. Perhaps he's not the biggest fan of Anthony Joshua. Perhaps there is a bit of bad blood between the two. And as I say, maybe he's on the payroll for this fight if he's being a sparring partner, training partner of Kevin Johnson. Perhaps he's also looking to sort of make controversial comments to further link himself with a future big payday against Anthony Joshua. I don't know. But whatever, I thought that was potentially interesting. And I realised that these fighters were being taken to Klitschko camp to spar. What I didn't really anticipate is that they'd be sparring each other. I thought they'd want to keep fresh for the sparring with Klitschko. I thought that would be the point. But quite an interesting thought that Anthony Joshua, Dillian Whyte, Joseph Parker, young fighters like that who are brought out to spar Klitschko will potentially have had some valuable rounds against experienced veterans like Kevin Johnson, Malik Scott, Sherman Williams, these are the sort of Michael Sprott, these kind of guys. Potentially, if Anthony Joshua has already shared a ring with Kevin Johnson, and vice versa, obviously, the two maybe already have some understanding of how the fight could go. Kevin Johnson made repeated reference to the fact that he wasn't going to get knocked out, and the fact that he had seen a weakness in Anthony Joshua's game. At the time, I put that down as just talking a fight up, just trying to, talking a good game. But if Kevin Johnson has shared a ring with Joshua in sparring, reportedly at least held his own according to Dillian Whyte, with Johnson's experience, with Johnson's ring savvy, it's not impossible that he will have seen something he's planning to expose against Anthony Joshua. Now, I appreciate that on the night things will be different. The fight will be over multiple rounds. I'm not sure, but I'd imagine it will be 10 or 12 rounds. That will call into question Kevin Johnson's desire and fitness and training. The fight will also be wearing 10-ounce gloves and no head guards, which will call into power how Kevin Johnson will stand up to Anthony Joshua's power. I appreciate that in sparring, a fighter may also not give their full performance. They won't have trained for the session. They may be holding something back. Joshua probably knew he was already scheduled to fight Kevin Johnson at the time. So I appreciate that sparring form does not necessarily translate, and that there are other sort of variables such as the round distance and the lighter gloves, the head guard. But I think, and this is a fight I like, this is a fight I was calling for before it was even announced. The more I hear about it, the more I like this fight. I think it's a real good test for Anthony Joshua at this stage of his career. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on Dillian Whyte's comments, on a future fight with Dillian Whyte, and on the sparring situation.